All right. Next up here in Arctic Seminars, we have Mr. Perttu Hämäläinen from Aalto University. He's a professor of computer games over there, and he will be talking to us about the combination of video games and exercise. And the exercise in question this time will be an augmented climbing wall. So let's welcome Mr. Perttu Hämäläinen.
Thank you. Thanks. Hard to see anyone there. I see one friendly face there. That's good. So great to be here. And I'll start with this show reel that should give an overview of what we do at Aalto. Okay, that show reel is now getting a bit old, and here I'm going to tell you some experiences from our latest project, which is the Augmented Climbing Wall. And it's a group effort led by Raine Kajastila, who is a postdoc researcher in my group, and then there's other people involved. At first it was only me and Raine, and now there's others joined and left, and this is the current team. My own role has been helping here and there, and especially with the computer vision. So there's two main topics. The augmented climbing wall system, which might be interested for those dabbling in VR or AR, like many are now. But on a more general level, it's also about the future of sports combined with augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality technology. To start, I'm showing a short teaser. Okay, this is the outline of the talk. So first I'm going to give some background and motivation, then go through the system, what kind of interactions we have developed, how we have evaluated them in user studies, and then what kind of challenges we have encountered and what kind of opportunities we see rising from these experiences and our user study data. And finally, I try to make some future predictions to guide future work and research. So personally, my mission has been for about 10-15 years now to improve health through exogames and digitally augmented sports that promote physical activity and movement skill learning. And I'm, of course, in pursuing this goal, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants like Myron Kruger, whose group did this really seminal work called Video Plays in early 80s. So exploring different kind of computer vision-based interactions. So they saw silhouettes of users extracted in real time using the technology of that time, so 30 years back. Pretty advanced at that time. It required a cluster of 16 computers to only get the silhouette out of data in real time. And this kind of research naturally combines both design and computer science. So basically, our research approach is that we identify problems, we develop and evaluate solutions, and also develop new technology if needed. The results then inform new theory and practice, and sometimes lead to commercial spin-offs, which is now happening with the augmented climbing. One of the main problems that we are tackling is exercise motivation. And finding motivation to exercise is super hard, especially at first when you're out of shape and exercising literally hurts. If you manage to keep going, it maybe gets less painful, but then you get bored. And nowadays, with the abundance of fitness trackers and sensors, many think that measuring and giving rewards and feedback is the key. However, motivation based on rewards, badges, leaderboards, that sort, is only half of the picture, if even that. In fact, fitness trackers and quantification works only for a subset of people. Others might resort to gaming or cheating the system. For example, in this case of a Lego robot that wiggles a pedometer to cheat, maybe the company where this guy is employed is giving some rewards based on the pedometer counts or something. Here's a video of that. So, how to go beyond simple rewards? A large body of research indicates that, especially for long-term motivation, supporting so-called intrinsic motivation is the key. And here we see some components that have been identified in exercise, sports, and games to be important factors of intrinsic motivation. So the essential research question is how to support these with game elements such as story, aesthetics, mechanics, and technology. So what kind of connections can we make? For exercise, the feeling of competence is especially important and a difficult one, because it's hard to feel competent at first when you're just totally out of shape and so on. It gets easier over time. In our research, we have explored new ways of fostering the feeling of competence and empowerment. Here are some examples from this game called Kick-Ass Kung Fu. Can you put the sound back? Good. So in our experiments, we have found that one can exaggerate the player's horizontal movement about 1.5 times without making it difficult to hit the targets. And the same can be applied to vertical motion, and we can also add like dynamic slow motion to accentuate the movement. We also developed computer vision tech that allowed the players to use any kind of weapon, such as these nunchucks or this axe that was improvised from packaging materials. And there's this voice-activated supercharge to maximize empowerment. Nowadays, thanks to Kinect, these experiences have become mainstream. However, after making and playing Kinect games, I'm quite disappointed in how standing in front of a television in a living room limits movement. So it's just so constrained in terms of creativity, diversity, enjoyment. So for me, this is clearly not the future. And I think living room exergames are just a phase of evolution of games from seated to standing and ultimately all other forms of movement. Following this line of thinking, we've started exploring adding digital technology to exercise outside the living room, such as in these trampoline games. The motivation here is, for example, that you can hopefully motivate people to practice the simple tricks where there's less risk of injury. And of course, you can also add these challenges like walls. In real life, this would also increase the risk of injury. And now, through these different projects, we have arrived at the augmented climbing, the most recent one. Here, I think it's key that using all the 4 limbs in non-standing movement, so not in front of television, not on the floor, but on the wall, it opens up totally new possibilities for movement and games. And our main research questions are like wanting to understand more about the opportunities and challenges of augmenting a sport with interactive technology. More specifically, how does the digital augmentation change climbing or watching someone climb? And then also, how does interactive technology, I got mixed up. So how does interactive technology change the sport? So climbing or watching someone climb. And there's a more practical problem-solving aspect to the work. In climbing gyms, routes are typically color-coded so that you, for example, climb a yellow route or green route. But then if you want to have really many routes, because of course people get bored if there's not enough new challenges. So if you try to add too many challenges in the small space, it gets impossible to read. But with digital projection, we can highlight the relevant holes for each route. So enough background. I now give a brief rundown of the augmented climbing wall system, which is quite simple in the end. So there's projector, depth camera, touchscreen, and computer. Some custom computer vision algorithms, because it turned out that Kinect doesn't track climbers out of the box because it's optimized for standing and people facing the camera, not people who are standing on a wall. And there's some examples of the Kinect 2 resolution. So at 2 meters, we can see the fingers, but then we lose the resolution. But at 5 meters, it's still barely enough to kind of see the hands, and that's about enough for us. And last major component is game engine. We are using Unity here. Then to the interactions. We've gone through many iterations to arrive at the current set of games and activities. We first did this Wizard of Oz study. So we were using these simple projected systems with mouse and keyboard while somebody was playing in order to kind of quickly test what would work. Here's some basic augmented route climbing. Which worked surprisingly well. There's sometimes you occlude the projection, but it's quite easy to move yourself and see where to go if needed. Then we had this kind of level editor that hey, what if you could create some routes while you are climbing and then share these with others. And this is actually something that we are still working on to get properly working. It's really hard to actually implement, but we have then developed different kind of level editors. So forward into the current game. So the Spark game is maybe the main attraction at the moment. So there's areas that you have to avoid. So don't touch the electricity. And then there's these waypoints, and that forces you to come up with novel movements that you don't encounter in climbing regularly. And there's also timing and coordination because the level is dynamic. And then there's the level editor. So anyone can create route, share it with friends, comment, rate. So it's kind of social media. And then there's some other games like this Wackabat, which is, for example, more for endurance training. So kind of endless climbing game. Okay, then briefly about the user studies. So how did we evaluate this system to see whether it really works? So we had this pilot study where we had this available at the Boulderkeskus Isatis for 4 months. The principal study had the Spark game, and there was a questionnaire, and we gathered some questionnaire data, and of course we sat there and observed a lot of climbers. I think more than 1,000 climbers must have climbed, or several thousand during the time. We have the exact stats somewhere that I can't quote from the top of my mind. But then there was 2 supplementary studies. So this we added the Wackerbot and route creation for 1 month, gathered some more data, and then also compared some interface versions. More of that a bit later. And there were several questions. These are the most relevant ones, maybe. So how does climbing in the game differ from regular climbing? So open-ended questions that we then coded using inductive thematic analysis. And how does watching someone play differ from watching regular climbing? Who is this most suitable for? Would this help your climbing practice, and how? So our paper summarizes and goes more into detail of the answers. Here's just some quotes. For example, people said that it's fun endurance practice, and endurance practice is something that doesn't happen so much in bouldering, because the routes are normally really short. Then it was praised for the diversity, so that there were novel poses that you try. And interestingly, these 2 quotes about heights, so that the game, people pointed out that the game provides excitement although you are not that high. And 3 users said that they forgot their fear of falling, which is really interesting. And we then interviewed some of these, and at least one was a beginner climber who said that normally his fear of heights prevents him from reaching the top, but in this game he didn't have this problem. So I guess that there's so much to think about that you forget to fear. And another interesting aspect was the spectator interaction. So people commented that these additional elements sparked more interaction between the audience and the climber. And in this video, there's some interview data also from a bouldering competition where this route was.
Mä yllätyin. Ehkä mä ajattelin, että se olisi jotenkin tosi tyhmä tai inhottava tai epämukava, mutta se oli tosi hauska. Ja sitten just siinä, että mä joudun ottaa siihen muutaman yrkäjyn, kun ei oikein hahmottanut niitä kohtia, että mistä se ottaa.
Se on vähän erilaista, mutta tämmöinen vähän eri asentoihin, mitä kiipeilyssä me tarvitsee tehdä. Et ei sun tossakaan tämmöinen vähän vaakataso. Että se niinku oikeesti tarvii tehdä sillä lailla, mutta se on hauskaa kikkailua. Aikalisä on kanssa semmonen, että sun pitää kiipeä nopeammin. Vähän, että sulla on musta hätäilyä, kun jos sä kiipetään boulderiin, niin sulla on kaikki aika maailmassa tavallaan. Paitsi kisoissa tietenkin.
No siis, mä olin tosi huono siinä, mutta se oli ihan sairaan hauskaa. Ja jotenkin koukuttaa, että siihen menee koko ajan uudelleen.
Okay, next I'm trying to summarize some of the challenges we encountered and the opportunities highlighted by the data and our experiences. The first challenge is that it turns out to be pretty difficult to stay conscious of what happens around you on the wall. Basically, there's the huge screen that is wider than your natural field of view, and gravity is binding you to the wall, so you can't just step back and take a look at the hole. And in addition to that, staying on the wall, on the holes and selecting the holes and moving, it takes a lot of attention, which is then away from paying attention to the graphics. In Wackerbat game, at first, users had huge difficulties in seeing where and knowing where the bats are. So that's why we, for example, had to add the trails. When the bats move, they leave a trail, and then the beacons that kind of broadcast their location on the wall. And we also ran a brief study to quantitatively verify that this is actually needed and helps the users. So this is something maybe to also bring to other games. And so this is how it looks like in action. And then challenge 2 is cheating. So we again encountered the basic rule of gamification, which is that you get what you measure, but there's often unanticipated side effects to that. So here people cheated. There was 2 players playing, one pressed the start button and the other pressed the stop button, so they got times like less than a second. And it's really interesting that this happens in climbing, which is otherwise really self-regulated, and there's no point in cheating yourself. And then the third challenge is the hostile environment. So climbers use a lot of chalk on their hands or magnesium carbonate, and that then circulates in the air and accumulates in everything. So during that 4 months, we lost one projector due to the dust, and we have since lost another one, which was supposedly like hermetically sealed and shouldn't have this problem, but still, so now we are now building our custom enclosures to fight the dust. Then the opportunities. I think the most important one is movement diversity. And this is important because we are all different. Different players and people are motivated by different things. Some might prefer strength over endurance challenges. Some might be more social, so on. So it's good that you can make exercise in environments more versatile, offering different challenges. And second is kind of our tagline, user-generated content for extreme sports. So in an environment where allowing users to modify the environment would otherwise present physical risk of injury. But here you can, when there's a digital layer, you can quite safely modify it and then share and copy and modify and so on. And the same with procedural content, and especially for endurance training, I think this is important so that you can create endless variety algorithmically and not run out of handcrafted content. To this, I would add multiplayer interaction, which is something we are now exploring more. Sometimes you see climbers doing these challenges like pair climbing, that you have to climb a route with your friend while holding hands. But this is quite difficult only for, I guess, for advanced climbers. But if we replace the physical connection with a digital one, we can create a range of new experiences. We have made several attempts at this, and here's the first one that seems to work. We call this climb ball. And this concept seems to work with the constraints that, okay, the climber's attention has to be on the holds for a lot of time. So that's why the reflectors are fixed on the holds. And the reflectors being static also hides the tracking glitches, which are inevitable. And finally, I think there's also potential to help learning movement skills. Augmented feedback for motor learning is actually a research field of its own. And in climbing, we've tried many things, but this is one concept that seems to be both simple and a perfect fit for the medium. Basically, once you fall, you can view a life-size replay of your performance. Here, Raine has just jumped down and now is watching his climb on the wall. It's surprisingly lifelike, although the resolution is a bit low and so on. So I'm nearing the end of my talk, and I'm going to briefly summarize and then venture to make some predictions of the future. So in summary, it's been 3 years almost now. We had the first prototype there, got nice publicity, decided to continue, then did further development, had the 4-month pilot, and now it's ready for commercialization thanks to TechS funding. And there's a number of challenges we've encountered, but also opportunities that might apply to other AR sports, such as the possibility to increase the diversity of movement and challenges, enabling user-generated content and multiplayer interaction with reduced risk, and helping people learn. Now, what's the future beyond these highlighted opportunities? Here's some thoughts which may or may not be accurate as future predictions go. Obviously, there's still many unexplored environments for augmentations. Here's another vertical wall-based thing. So this is a dance performance happening on a wall, but they are using the rope suspension, like circus harnesses and ropes. And I think this could combine a lot of this diversity and also empowerment. Also, although I don't know how much you have to practice to be able to move like that. Human movement empowerment technology is also advancing rapidly, and indoor skydiving is an extreme example. This footage is from Perttu, 1 hour drive from here. This is our flight instructor. So we went for a research and what's the word? So it was a virkistyspäivä thing as well as research. We went to try the flying. So anyone can go and have a few minutes. It's quite expensive, but if you're interested in new kinds of movements, definitely worth it. So it would be really cool to have some kind of interactive projected graphics there or something. And virtual reality, like we see here, is probably going to be huge, with or without some real-world components. So I've talked about environments. So they and enhanced mobile movement provide new opportunities for player action, but what about interaction? This is where I think AI will play a huge role, for example, in the form of virtual martial arts opponents or a virtual climbing coach. And we are actually very close to human-level movement AI now. So here's Boston Dynamics' latest Atlas robot that is now able to get up unassisted, although it looks like there's some kind of algorithm, so it's not that natural. And the control of simulated virtual characters and robots is actually even more advanced. Here's our own algorithms from a couple of years back. So these are capable of also getting up, but doing so like improvising, just going with the flow and always coming up with new ways. And there's no training data or pre-computation needed. And while humanoid robotics is catching up, researchers have already begun exploring games and exercise with more simple robots. Drones in particular are already used as jogging coaches or personal trainers, and there's interesting studies like the hoverball, which is about basic question like what kind of ball sports can you create if the ball can move like by itself, if it's intelligent and it can come back or dodge obstacles and so on. So to summarize, it's kind of exhausting to think of all the possibilities. The design space of sports and technology is pretty unlimited. Maybe my main takeaway for you would be that there are various continuums or dimensions, such as the degree of virtuality. And it's not binary, there's endless variety in each dimension. Like here, from the real-world technological augmentation with robots to digital augmented reality, and then pure virtual reality. In this talk, I've given some examples of empowerment with varying degrees. Augmented climbing and kick-ass kung fu are in the middle of the virtuality continuum, but kick-ass kung fu, for example, is more empowered. And there are, of course, many other dimensions, such as the balance of cognitive problem solving and physicality. Climbing, for example, is both. It's kind of rare sport in that. And together with emerging technologies such as AI and robotics, there's infinite possibilities. And this concludes my talk. Thank you. Any questions?
Exactly. Does anyone have anything to ask? Apparently we had a pretty conclusive talk. So.
Yeah, that's okay.
All right. Well, one more round of applause for Perttu Hämäläinen.
Thank you.